we had some very funny things happen in the way of being wounded and so forth. Did any of you know Lefty McGee that was local here? Lefty McGee was one of the best baseball. How much time did we have?
Right. We have 35 minutes. If you change it up any way you like.
35 minutes?
Questions or,
We'll have a question and answer session about 10 minutes. You give me a signal, 10 minutes till.
I sure.
But Lefty McGee was a young kid from Ponca City here. He was the best pro baseball prospect that this whole country had seen. He dropped in there when we dropped into Holland, and we dropped into about a 2-mile square area that was covered with tanks and infantry support. And we began to fight and knock these tanks out and kill the infantry. And Lefty McGee got shot through the head. They hit him in the back of the head, went through his head, and exited out his eye socket. Well, paratroopers do not afford the luxury of medics. We don't have medics with us. But each paratrooper carried in 19 and 40 and 42 in there. They came out with 2 of what they called miracle drugs. One of them was sulfur powder, and the other was penicillin. That was their first issue. And each one of us carried a bag of that sulfur powder on us, and we carried a box of penicillin tablets, and we carried 6 shots of morphine. And if a soldier beside you got wounded seriously, you immediately gave him all the aid that you could by pouring powder in all the holes you could find. If he was conscious enough that he could drink water without strangling, you would give him a handful of tablets. And then you would give him 2 or 3 shots of morphine before you moved on off and left him. You didn't stay with him. You just treated him immediately and then left. And we fought, I guess, about 2 hours on these tanks before we got all these tanks knocked out and all the infantrymen, the support they had killed. And paratroopers are not any more or less emotional than anyone else. But we had certain limits and abilities that we could do, so we cannot take prisoners. We don't have any way to take care of them. We don't have any way to hurt them. We don't have any way to feed them. So paratroopers did not take prisoners. You killed everything that you came in contact with. So after a big fight, there would be several of them out in there that was still wounded but still alive. And you would comb back through the area and kill all of those people. All those Germans were crippled. As we were coming back through, there was Lefty McGee out there crawling around trying to stay alive, but half his head gone. And we gave him some more sulfur powder, poured it in him, another shot of morphine, and walked off and left him. And that's the last I thought I would ever see of Lefty McGee. When I came home, I was on a hospital train in December of 1945, and I was going up to Springfield, Missouri to undergo some plastic surgery on my head. And I jumped off the train. I went AWOL. My mother had died while I was overseas. And I had told my father that I would be home and spend Christmas Eve with him in 45. So the only way I could make that arrangement work out very well was to just jump off of the train and go AWOL, which I did. And I came home and I was walking up the street, Granddad, right in front of the Ponca City. And this paratrooper approached me in full dress, and big dark glasses on. I thought, for the life of me, that looks just exactly like Lefty McGee. And I was almost afraid to address him or speak to him, but when he got up very close, I said, Lefty. And man, he wheeled around, he put that good eye on me, and he said, Sargeant McNiece, you idiot. He said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just drunk and AWOL. They were living it up and having a good time. What are you doing, Lefty? So we began to talk. And he said that the British came by and found him and picked him up and doctored him and treated him and got him back into unit. And he had been in plastic surgery ever since that time. They took one of his ribs out. You know, all your rib bones have a little socket on them that hinges into your backbone. They took one of those out of that kid and made him a nice socket there. His whole work with plastic surgery on him. And he lived until about 2 years ago. Lefty died about 2 years ago. He was so young that he never had a driver's license when he went in, and he was never able to get one after he came out. And I used to drive he and his wife, Dora, to Enid to the commissary over there to get their groceries at about 30% off until about 2 years ago. We had a boy that you jump with all kinds of equipment on you. In addition to your own body weight, you have about 150 pounds of equipment on you. And this is a pretty tough strain on a parachute. This will probably surprise you, but as you fly into a drop zone, or that you're going to be engaged in combat, you fly in at about 400 feet in those C-47. The German radar was not very sophisticated, and they couldn't pick anything up below 400 feet. So we would fly in at 400 feet. And then when you get to your drop zone, when they give you the green light to bail out of there, well, you hit that silt. And when you do, they raise the tail of the ship up just a little bit, and the nose is going down, where it'll blow you under the tail without engaging it. And if you can make it face that tail, you're in pretty good shape. But with all this equipment on you, it's liable to tear up your parachute, liable to tear out big humps of it. It has 28 pie-shaped panels on it to make the entire surface of your dome of your chute. And sometimes the shock in your weight, you're going 125 miles an hour under that tail. When you come to a sudden get that opening shock, sometimes it'll tear a third or a half of that parachute canopy off of it. And Rasmussen, a boy named Rasmussen, had a flamethrower attached to his leg. The flamethrower weighs 105 pounds. He had one of those on his leg. In addition to that, he had 36 pounds of high explosive. And in addition to that, he had his weapons, 3 knives, his bayonet, his trench knife, and his zip block. He had 10 grenades and 120 rounds of ammunition and his gun, all that. And supposedly, when your chute opens, he was supposed to pull a pin, and that would drop this flamethrower down below him 25 feet. It was on a rope tied to his belt. And it didn't work. When he got his opening shot, he tried to pull a pin that wouldn't come loose. So he landed in the middle of an area probably half the size of the football field up there, with probably 150, 200 Germans in it, and he landed in the middle of it, and the weight of that thing sprained both of his ankles. So he was trying to balance himself and get into a position to fight. And when he did, they shot him in the elbow, hit him in the elbow. And the bullet followed those bones up in his arm, through his shoulder and his back, and then it hit another bone that turned down, it went down into his belly. So he fought about 5 days like that with that bullet in his belly. And finally got back to the outfit, and he talked to a doctor that belonged to some infantry unit. He told the doctor, he said, I got a bullet in my belly, and he said, I'd like to get it cut out. He said, it hurts me. He said, it's painful. He said, if I cough or if I sneeze or if I have to make a sudden movement, he said, it's painful. He said, I'd like to get that thing cut out. And this doctor said, let me see your belly. And so he ripped his jacket open, and not a sign on it. And the doctor asked him, said, how did you get that bullet in your belly, Rasmussen? And he said, well, I got hit here in my arm and showed he showed him his arm. It just had a little scab on it. And this sulfur powder done a really good job. And this doctor told him, he said, what's the matter? He said, is it getting too rough up here for you? Rasmussen said, I'll tell you one thing, you SOB. He said, if it was too rough for Rasmussen up here, he said, you wouldn't be around asking any questions. He said, you'd have been long gone, boy. He said, I've got that bullet in my belly, I'd like to get it cut out. And he said, well, I'm going to send you back here where there is where they have some x-ray equipment. He said, you better have a bullet in your belly. And Rasmussen said, I got it. And they took him back there and x-rayed him, and this doctor told him, he said, well, he said, the bullet's there all right. But he said, I wouldn't encourage you to operate and take it out. He said, if you do, you're going to cut a lot of muscles and a lot of nerves and this and that. And he said, normally, he said, a bullet or something like that in you, he said, scar tissue will form around it and whatever body you. He said, it'll be sore for a while, but he said, you're going to be okay. And Rasmussen came right back and began to fight and never missed a day of combat. You saw all kinds of crazy wounds and things happen there that would add a lot of humor in it. we had Dr. Kurt Urey, who practiced medicine here for 100 years. He's retired now, but he was captured at Bastogne. They had 7 divisions attacking us. In other words, they had about 40 to 1 odds is what they had. And when they pushed around, when they would push in, we would all go and fight for one spot until we would get them knocked out. Then they would turn around and would reform the circle. They moved in where the hospital was, where Dr. Kurt Urey was battalion sergeant major, and he was captured, and they came in. And when they came in, they machine gunned the entire hospital. Everybody that was wounded, all the doctors, all everything, and loaded them up like cordwood at 2.5-ton crosses. We pushed them out and made off with them. Kurt Urey was a prisoner of war over there till the end of the war, and then he came back to Ponca City and started his practice here. There was a lot of peculiar things that happened in that, and I was a real goofball. I never made PFC. I stayed in there my entire service and never made PFC. But I had a good time, and I never did anything real disastrous or anything like that. I tried to fight a good war. I tried to get the war over with as quick as possible, because I was bothered by the intermission that I was going through. I was an alcoholic when I went in, and I didn't want to miss out on anything. I wanted to get right back as quick as I could and take up my vocation again. So when I went through all the service and everything, I was separated out here in Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, and they gave me my service record and everything. When I was at Fort Chaffee, I went in town one night, first time that I went into an American city since the war started. And I went in and got into a big brawl, got drunk, got in a big battle with a couple of MPs that was trying to send me back to the hospital. And I didn't want to go, and I still wanted to stay a while. So I had a fight with these 2 MPs, whooped them and told them to go get some help, and they went and got some help. They brought back 5 guys, and one of them was an officer. And we had a big battle in there, and they finally corralled me and threw me in a stockade, and finally they court-martialed me. I'd gone all through the war and never had been court-martialed. I'd been in and out lots of stockades and this and that, but I had been court-martialed. So they court-martialed me down there while I was still in the hospital waiting for plastic surgery. And when the guy they always talk to you is they separate you from the service and try to find out what your main occupational service is and this and that, and get all your records and so forth. And they give you a small separation pay. I don't remember how much it was. I think it was like $200 or something like that. And so he kept talking to me, and they were trying to get you to re-enlist and volunteer and so forth, and I didn't want any more of it. I just wanted my money, and I kept saying, just give me my money, and I'll get on out of here. And he finally laughed. He said, he said, I think that you owe us some money. All the time that you spend in the stockade or AWOL or things like that, they count that bad time. And he said, McNiece, he said, just looking at your record, he said, I think you've got more bad time than you've got good time. He said, you may owe us some money. But I got separated down there, and on my discharge papers, to show you that I wasn't a total goofball, I did do some soldiering while I was there. I received the Presidential Unit Citation 3 times. I received the Bronze Star 4 or 5 times. I know 4, maybe 5. I received the French Croix de Guerre. That's the highest military decoration they issued. I received the Dutch Orange Lanyard in Holland when we were fighting over there. I received the Belgian Croix de Guerre with palms. I received the Belgian Feu Rouge for the activities in Bastogne. I had 2 invasion arrowheads. I made the invasion of Normandy and I made the invasion of Holland. I had 2 Pathfinder arrowheads. I made 2 complete missions as a Pathfinder successfully. I had 5 campaign ribbons in Europe. I was in every campaign that they processed in Europe. I had the European Victory Medal. I think that's the name of it. I had the Dove Peace Medal. They gave everybody a little old Dove deal when they came out. They called it the ruptured pigeon, I think. But anyway, it was kind of a award. I had parachute wings with 4 stars on them. That was very unusual. There was only 3 men that lived through 4 combat jumps in Europe. And I had on my wings, I also had 4 arrowheads. And I had the pathfinding at sea. So I really was a goof-off all the way through it. But I soldiered good in combat. But in garrison, I guess I was the worst thing that they had ever seen. The book that is being passed around, and all those pathfinders that you see there, between the 2 tabs, were men that I took into Normandy. That was what was composed of the Filthy 13. And I came out, I took in 20 men and came out with 2. So those boys were good soldiers. They accomplished exactly what we were supposed to do, and we had a good time always there. Now, I'm sure that there's things that I have not even touched that y'all are interested in. We're going to have a question and answer session here. It's going to be on the KISS program, K-I-S-S. That means keep it simple, stupid. Because you're not addressing Schwarzkopf up here, you know. He always had his big deal. But if you have any questions about paratrooping or equipment or gear, or if you have anything that you want to know about my opinion about the war, why, don't hesitate to ask. Go ahead, just feel free. Raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Yeah.
Did you ever get wounded?
Did I ever get wounded?
Yeah.
Yes, I got wounded. I was wounded in Normandy on D-Day morning when I told you how much equipment we carried in with us, you know, on our personal body. And you have 2 great big cargo pockets on the front of your pants. And when I got down to them, I had 2 articles left. They give you rations, K rations, for 1 day's operation when you jump in behind the lines. They give you 3 little old boxes, about like kitchen match boxes, full of food to last you the first day. From then on, you're on your own. I had these 3 boxes of food that I had to store somewhere. And I had these 2 cargo pockets left. I also had 2 rolls of Copenhagen, 8 boxes of Copenhagen in each roll. So I decided, well, I'm either going to have to throw away my food or my tobacco. And I thought, I never do know where I'll ever be able to get a hold of any more Copenhagen over here in Europe. So I threw my food away. I thought it'll ever get so tough in there that I can't find something to eat, you know, but I didn't know where I was going to get any more tobacco. So I threw my food away and kept my Copenhagen. And they had flooded the areas that we were going to work in all night. And I had been in water from knee-deep on up to over my head for 4 or 5 hours, getting in on these bridges, down river and through them, and so forth. And as next morning, when we had blown up the 2 bridges we were assigned and had the 3rd one wired and ready to blow anytime we wanted to, we had it done electrically. Well, I was laying there and we were fighting across this river. They had a big dike along the river. And I was fighting across the river with these boys, these Germans right on the other bank. And they laid in around the mortar, and they dropped right beside me. They hit within 2 foot of me. And I was suddenly blinded. I couldn't see. And I wasn't hurting really bad, but I couldn't see. And I thought, uh-oh, they knocked your eyes out. Here you are, 15 miles behind the front lines, in the middle of an enemy territory, and you're blind. Well, I rubbed across back and forth behind, and I could just see dimly, and my hand was covered with blood. And I thought, yeah, they got you in the eyes, you know. But what it was, I'd been hit all through the hand here and wrist. And that's where most of the blood was coming from. I was bleeding from up around my head and eyes. But the more my eyes watered, the more of this dirt it washed out of. And this was a sandy causeway, and it had knocked mostly sand in my eyes, and that's why I couldn't see. So I was the happiest guy you ever saw when I found out I could still see. And the wounds were just practically nothing. I never even reported it, never even went to an aid station. Of course, there wasn't any aid station to go to for 5 days to begin with, but that's the only time that I was wounded in service, in combat. But just before I came home, I was supposed to come home from France on September the 12th in 45, and I thought, well, I'll never get back over here to Paris again, so I think I'll just run into Paris tonight and throw me a real big. They had a red light district down there called Pic Alley. We called it Big Alley. And it was full of prostitution and dope and black market and all that. Well, 2 paratroopers could go in there, and they were in good shape. But I didn't have a paratrooper to go with, so I went in by myself. And I got in there and got in a drunken brawl that night, and I got cut. All these scars that you see on the side of my head and neck and face here. And I went into a hospital there on September the 11th, AWOL, and I stayed in the hospital until February the 26th. They operated on my head and did plastic surgery and rebuilt my ear, made me a channel down into my head. So after going through all the war with hardly a scratch, I never got killed out there in big action. Outside of that, I was never ever touched again. Yes, sir?
Have you seen the movie Saving Private Ryan?
Yes.
Is that anything like that?
That is, The Saving of Private Ryan is a very accurate show. A friend of mine here in town asked me here a while back if I would go to the theater with him, and I said, I never go to the theater. He said, well, he said they have a show here that made The Saving of Private Ryan. He said, I just wonder how authentic it is. He said, it's very brutal, and he said most old veterans can't stand to watch it. You know, they break down or you start crying or have flashbacks. He said, would it bother you? And I said, no, I don't think it would bother me. I said, there's probably nothing in there that I haven't seen 1,000 times. The Saving of Private Ryan was in my regiment. He was in E Company, up in E Company. And I had fought right through the same places and walked down the same streets that the pictures were. The pictures that they made that they were showing, a lot of those were war films that was made by the Army Signal Corps. And I saw only 2 things in it that I thought was probably not correct. Did you see the show? Do you remember the scene where that they were fighting, these paratroopers were fighting up the street, and the wall of a building fell out into the street, and there was an elderly man and a middle-aged couple and a young girl, probably 8, 10, 12 years old, was on the floor of that second story. And in her excitement and so forth, the young girl panicked and fell off down into the street, right in the middle of these paratroopers that were fighting up the street. 2 or 3 scenes later, it showed a paratrooper setting her back up on the floor of the building. That wasn't true to life. If that child had been, if she had fallen into the midst of paratroopers, they would have killed her before she hit the ground. Not because that they are cruel or that they desire to, but you cannot let anything stand between you and what you are going to do. So that wasn't true to life. Another scene that was not true to life that showed them capturing probably 10 or 15 Germans, and one of them was saying Babe Ruth and Betty Grable and American slang. You know. So there was a little young man with this group that was trying to find him, and he felt sorry for the guy. He said, let's don't kill him, let's just blindfold him and tell him to take 1,000 paces in a certain azimuth, and then take his blindfold off. And an old paratrooper standing there and said, kill that soldier. But they did release him, and about a week later, they were fighting him again, if you remember. Well, that old paratrooper would not have even argued with him. He would have just killed that prisoner. Those were 2 things that was wrong. Now, there is one thing that you cannot see in a movie that will not produce it, and that is the odor and the stench of war. It is a terrible thing, because you are fighting with mutilated bodies laying all around you that have been there maybe a week or 10 days, and they're being eaten with maggots crawling in and out of them. They're all when people are killed instantly and violently, 2 things generally happen. if you'll watch all shows of automobile accidents, actual photography, you'll see shoes laying around all over the place, you know. Your foot has, I guess, 200 bones, and it totally relaxes upon impact of violent death. And usually will fly off of the feet if there's a heavy impact. And that happens, and you see all these carcasses laying there dead and dying. Some of them may have been trying to die for a week. And they put off terrible stenches and odors. And it absolutely will impregnate your clothing. Even after you fight out of a area, you still have that stench on you. So those are things that they can or do not put in a movie. Have any other questions? Mr. Hill, do any of y'all have questions? Have you got any time left?
I sure appreciate you coming, so don't be afraid to ask some questions. Sometimes some of the best jobs the speaker can do for you is when you initiate and ask some questions. We've had a couple of good questions. Sure, somebody else have a question.
Don't be afraid to ask a question. I'll try to answer anything that you ask. Yes, sir.
What was your preferred weapon in combat?
Your preference on weapons changes with each mission. If you're going to be doing a lot of street fighting, like it's showed in the picture, Saving of Private Ryan. In street fighting, you like to have a lot of grenades and a Thompson submachine gun, or a flamethrower. If you're going to be fighting out in the field, in open areas, you either want a 30-06 or an M1 Garand. The M1 Garands were issued in. You want a machine gun because you'll be fighting in such close quarters that you'll be in a room maybe half this big with a dozen people, and you can just rake the whole bunch of them. And if you even touch them with 45 slugs, they're down. And out in the field, if you have a field of fire that maybe is 50 yards or more, you want a 30-06. They're the most accurate rifle that they have, and they're the most dependable. They don't get clogged up and dirty. You can lay one down in a mud pile and pick it up if it refuses to fire and jam there. You just whip that bolt out and run it across the back butt and hammer back in there, and it's ready to go again. An M1, when it gets dirt and mud and snow in it, you nearly have to field strip it and take it all apart and get it back in action. But you want high firepower when you're in close quarters, and you want your rifle when you have a distance to shoot. Yes, sir.
You taking like any of the German weapons?
Beg pardon?
Taking like the German guns from them or anything?
No, that was a very dangerous thing to do. German rifles was mainly their 8mm Monster. And that's what we copied our Springfield 6 off of. But it has a different firepower and blast to it. You can tell the difference in the sound between the two rifles. So if you pick up a German rifle and you're firing it, an American over here will take the first movement that he sees in that area and crib. They're little machine pistols, what they call machine pistols, where I had a more rapid firepower than our atomic submachine guns did. But you could distinguish the difference in the sound. So it's dangerous to pick up a German rifle or gun and try to use it. You have some peculiar things in combat. When we got ready to jump into Normandy on D-Day, do any of you know what those crickets are that came out of the Cracker Jack boxes years ago? They used to make a little tin cricket, and you could press it and it would click twice. When you jump in at night, as we did in Normandy, you may walk around the corner of the building and be as close as you are to this gentleman here. And in the dark, you don't know whether he's a German or a paratrooper. And both of you stand there with a gun and the other is good, just waiting for someone to reveal their identity. So we used this cricket, and we was just standing in this position with your gun on fire, ready to start blasting or ready to bayonet the other person. you prick, you prick. If he was a paratrooper, he would prick his twice. Then you identify him. We used some words that were unusual. The German word for halt is the same as ours, it's halt. So, in essence, it's where you're trying to identify a person. You have a challenge, which is halt, then you have a password, and then you have a reply, and this gives you a triple check. So instead of using the word halt on D-Day night, we use the word flash, because the Germans have a very tough time pronouncing FLs. For our reply, we use the word welcome, because the German knew our password. He couldn't say it. He can't pronounce it, does he? He would have said welcome. The reply to that was thunder, because they cannot pronounce a TH. They couldn't say thunder if they knew what it was. They would have said thunder. So we use those means of identification on D-Day night. And that's a biblical deal. If you know your Bible, they had a big battle one time in the Bible, and the one group of people couldn't say the word Mephibosheth. And when they got ready to cross this creek and so forth, they'd ask them to say Mephibosheth. And if they couldn't say it, they went in and killed them. So we use the same thing in Normandy.
Did it ever happen to you?
Beg pardon?
Did it ever happen to you, like, ran into like a German who couldn't say it or something like that in the dark?
I had, I lost my men awful quick when I got on the ground. And when I did, the fields and the little, Normandy is dairy, poultry, dairy country, and fruit. And their little fields and farms, 2.5 acres is a big field or farm. And they had hedgerows all around that. They didn't use barbed fences. They built up mounds of dirt this high and that wide. And then they grew hedges on them. I had fought for myself for about 2 hours. And they had kicked me in and out of every hedgerow over there. I thought that the war had been canceled. I thought I was the only one that was left, because I couldn't find any other paratroopers. And I was going down this hedgerow, and there was Germans right in the hedgerow with me. And it came into a junction right along the side of the road. And there was another hedgerow there. And I was in the corner of that hedgerow, and directly across the road from me was a narrow road like when you ripped the wall. I could see a dugout and a gap on the other side of the road. And I thought I could see a shadow of a man. And I was trying to fight these Germans back off of the 3 hedgerows that I was in the junction on. And I finally decided that I had to get across that road or they were going to hit me. So I cricked my cricket. And I didn't get any reply out the dugout. I cricked it again, didn't get a reply. So I decided the only way I'm going to get out of this thing is I had an M1 with me. An M1 with a bayonet. So I thought the only thing I could do is just charge that dugout and see if I can get that guy with a bayonet. And I made a run across the road, started running across the road, and here this guy came up out there bigger than $900, and he said, "Flash, flash, flash." So I knew it was a paratrooper, and I just missed him with my bayonet, pulled it off of him. He got down the dugout with me. And he said, "Boy," he said, "you're liable to get killed running to these dugouts." He said, they've got men in on machine gun. And I said, "I know." I said, "This isn't the first one I've been through. I've been through about 4 of them already." But I said, "Why, you idiot, didn't you answer my prayer?" I said, "You're the one that got killed." I said, "Why didn't you answer my prayer?" He said, "Well," he said, "you know, there's about as many Germans that have got crickets now as there are paratroopers." And he said, "They're using them like duck callers." And he said, "I thought you was a German." The way things was shaping up and looking. And he said, "If it had turned out to have been a German," he said, "you know what I'd have had to have done?" I said, "No, what would you have had to have done?" This is the first paratrooper I've seen. He said, "I'd have had to jump up and run across the road and beat you to death with this belt of machine gun ammunition." Because he said, "That's the only thing I got left to fight with." He was a machine gunner, and when he got his opening shot, he tore his machine gun off of his hand. And he was down there in the middle Germany, in German forces. But I don't think the world fight with it, except that they're from China. Yes, sir.
About half the class are young ladies. What about the women's role? What were their role in the World War during this time? The women.
You had, this is the first time, I suppose, that women had ever been drafted into military service and volunteered. And they were hundreds of thousands of them. And they did a tremendous job. They used them in hospitals, they used them in supply units, they used them to do all the clerical work. None of them ever engaged in combat. They do now, I think. I think they train them now to engage in physical combat. But at that time, they did a terrific thing. They had 3 units of them. They had the wax, and that was regular Army, I think, women, or well, that was Air Corps, women, WAC, Women's Air Corps or something like that. They had the waves that were in the Navy, and they had the regular military in the Army, and they did a tremendous job. They did a tremendous job.
Any final questions? A couple minutes before the bell. We really appreciate you coming today, and because of Mr. McNiece and a lot of the heroes of the war, we have the freedom we have today because of people like Mr. McNiece. So let's give him a hand.